we can't really print any more money. For the first time in history, we're actually faced with fixing the problem. And unfortunately, if you look at what like Greece had to do when they had a borderline currency crisis and they couldn't restructure their debt and they couldn't print more money, they had to drastically cut entitlements. They had to raise taxes. They basically have to do stuff that the spineless politicians in this country won't do due to the corporate interest, because they'll be one and done and they'll be voted out. So it really is like a Mexican standoff with what's going on right now, because the politicians know what needs to be done, but they can't do it because they're afraid that they'll get voted out.
Hey everyone, welcome to our latest Trade to Black podcast. I am your host, Shad Dales, and today we're talking more earnings from some of the big MSOs of the cannabis landscape, as well the latest inflation's report. And did it come in lower? Yes, what most analysts were predicting. And finally, what to expect from Tucker Carlson's recent announcement about starting a show within Twitter and how that will all work. Let's bring in our two guests. As usual, lead financial writer Benjamin A. Smith. Good to see you, sir. Midweek.
Yeah, good to be here. Tucker's making the news. Looking forward to talking about that.
I know. Anthony Verrill, good to see you. Employee of the Month, November 2022 for FTX. That is an unbelievable T-shirt.
Yeah, it's one I'll keep around for a while. Got the Silicon Valley Bank one on deck for the next episode.
What's that one? The Silicon Bank
Loan officer of the month. At least I'm not managing their equity portfolio.
The thing is, you don't look like a diversity hire. So, how'd you get that job?
At FTX?
Yeah. I thought they only hired diversity hires, but anyway. I'm going off record.
Yeah. All good. All views of the Trade of Black podcast, the guests on this podcast are purely opinion. You should not treat any opinions expressed by us or our guests as investment advice, and the views on this podcast are solely intended to be informational and are not investment advice. Okay, let's begin as we continue down this week with more earnings reports. Next up, Trulieve, who reported earlier this week their Q1 financials. Some of the highlights include revenue of $289 million, with 95% of revenue from retail sales. They also achieved GAAP gross margin of 52%, with gross profit of $150 million, generated adjusted EBITDA of $78 million, or 27% of revenue, and their cash at the end of the quarter was $195 million. Anthony, what's your big takeaway from this latest earnings from Trulieve?
I mean, what I was happiest about was to see the lowering of the SG&A expenses by $24 million. I mean, revenues, it's a little light, marginally speaking, but I mean, I don't think this is a bad quarter. I think they'll live to see another day. Granted, they didn't break out the earnings report how I would have liked to see. Looking at those West Coast assets to see what the general health is of the harvest assets from the acquisition. But I mean, I think it's all around a net positive for me.
So, Ben, when we look at this, not a bad quarter, as Anthony said. Do you think we've turned the corner? You know, there's not a lot of consumer spending. It's been hit hard the last, 6 months to a year at least, given the current economic turns. But is this a sign? Go ahead, Anthony.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't think we've turned that corner. Otherwise, they'd be profitable.
No, okay.
And showing free cash flow. They're making strides. It's not a dud of a quarter. It's not a kill. They didn't kill it this quarter. But it's okay. It's a good solid quarter.
But to say that, Ben, is this a small step in the right direction for not only the company, but could we see a sign of things where we're turning a point potentially within the overall industry?
I think it's a little early to say that. I think there were good points and bad points this quarter. They missed on revenue guidance by estimates by like $8 million and adjusted EBITDA by a little bit too. I'm with Anthony, not a huge deal. Like when you're talking about $290 million in revenue-ish, missing by $7 or $8 million is not huge, but it doesn't show that the business is thriving either. But there were some good signs. SG&A expenses were lowered by $24 million, so they got good cost control. Gross margins increased by 200 basis points or 2%, which is obviously good in the right direction. But overall, I think this is mostly kind of like what we've seen in the industry, kind of like a middling quarter, not a killer quarter, and not a quarter where you can say, okay, yeah, the industry's turned the corner, big profits are ahead. I think it's just, a tread ground type of quarter.
Anthony, what is the thing that keeps you positive about Trulieve long term? Also, what are your concerns about Trulieve long term?
Yeah, I mean, I know I've been bearish on them in several episodes, going back probably a month or two. But I mean, after really looking into them and looking at the landscape of what Florida can turn into if adult use actually passes, I think that they can tremendously expand their revenue just by the state of Florida. When you look at the California brands that I've mentioned, I mean, they are in Florida, they're here, and they're penetrating the market. However, the scale of the dispensaries and the retail locations that they're in hails in comparison to the footprint that Trulieve actually has in the state. I like that Trulieve's got the first mover advantage in Georgia as well. They're already setting up shop in that medical market. I think they'll do if they do the same thing in Georgia that they did in Florida, that's going to turn into another cash cow. Now, on the other side of the coin, like I said, the opacity around the assets that were acquired in the Harvest acquisition is grim at best. That's from analysts to investors to just people that are in tune with the company. I mean, everyone wants to know the health of those and to what's going on with them. That's yet to be determined. So, I mean, that's the only thing that I could see is tarnishing what's to come for Trulieve.
Now, before we move on, I want to, I like what Anthony said there too, and I agree. Like for a first quarter in any fiscal year, I would have liked to see a little bit more guidance in the press release. Like I would have liked to see how the Harvest assets are doing. That was a big question going in. I would like to see full year revenue guidance. What are they guiding for the year? This is the first quarter of the reporting, right? So they didn't provide that in the press release. And I wasn't on the earnings call after post release call, but I hear that guidance was not given there either. So I think whenever you don't do that in the first quarter, a lot of analysts covering this company, it gives you a little bit of uncertainty about what they think the projections are for the full year. So that provides a little uncertainty there. That's why I think you've seen the stock down 2-3% today, and why there's a little apprehension.
Good point. Very good point. Also worth noting, too, that Trulieve was the first company to launch an advertising campaign on Twitter, which to me is a sign of things to come for other companies in the space. But overall, Anthony, do you think Twitter is really going to help these companies?
No, because their ad platform sucks. I've tried to use it for advertising on every company that I've ever been a part of. It sucks.
And a nightmare.
It is a vastly inferior product to what you see on Google, to what you see on Meta. It's not very good. I don't know how marketers are actually going to generate an ROI from it. And I don't think it moves the needle for me at all.
Mark that on the to-do list for Elon. I'm sure you'll probably see changes if that's the case. Let's now shift to Verano, latest company to report their earnings. They reported $227 million, increased 12% year over year, and increased 1% versus the previous quarter. Gross profit of $109 million, or 48% of revenue. We also saw a net loss of $9 million, adjusted EBITDA of $71 million, or 31% of revenue, and SG&A expense of $75 million, or 33% of revenue. Again, Ben, what's the big takeaway from this earnings regarding Verano? Same thing?
I'm going to sound like a broken record, yeah, but I think it was a solid quarter. I think it doesn't blow you away. They came in right around their estimates, some good things to like, and bad things to like, mostly good, actually. For example, their SG&A expenses were 33% of revenue as opposed to 36% sequentially. So again, good cost control here. We've seen that along the curve with some of these big MSOs. Adjusted EBITDA margin did fall a little bit, which is not what you want to see, but it's still $71 million for the quarter. They have free cash. Free cash flow totaled $8 million, so that's a step in the right direction. And again, right around estimates. So I think it doesn't blow you away, but it's a solid quarter. It's solid, get me through quarter, stepping stone to the next.
Agree, Anthony?
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was the same. I mean, if you look at both of the earnings prints and you look at the highlights, I mean, it's almost like Big Brother, Little Brother, Trulieve to Verano. Verano's like right on their heels in every metric. They're almost analogous in every metric. And it's not a bad quarter. It's solid. There's nothing glaring that I could say I wouldn't want to be a shareholder of this company. But like Ben said, there's also nothing that's like, all right, well, I need to get in now. It's an okay quarter.
Did they provide guidance for this quarter, Anthony?
They did guide. They actually did guide. I glanced over it, but there's a pretty fat guidance section in their earnings report as opposed to Trulieve.
Okay, so as you guys have said, little brother, big brother, pretty much the same kind of reports. What do you think you can anticipate, as we get through these challenging times for the industry? And just hanging in there is kind of the expression the term we've been using this week with a lot of these earnings reports. Do we expect to see the same thing in the back end of 2023? Like, is that what investors can anticipate for a lot of these companies in the overall industry, Ben?
If I had to guess and pull out my crystal ball, I'm going to say yes. And the reason why I say that is because any retail business, whether you're looking at clothing or anything retail, is really coming under pressure right now. Producer prices are still high, even though they're coming down in line with inflation. But it's really the consumer that is its purchasing power is not at a high point right now, and we may be entering recession. I don't know if people follow Stanley Druckenmiller, but some legendary fund managers out there and some commentators think that we could be going in recession. That's never good for consumer spending. So I think it's going to be like a tread water situation for the next 2 or 3 quarters. Although cannabis pricing on the wholesale market has been ticking up recently, so that's a good sign. So if pricing can firm up and the consumer can hang in, I think we can see a little bit of traction, but that's not what I'm expecting.
Yeah. Anthony, in the U.S. alone, there was 13,000 banks at one time, and that number's now 4,000, if I'm correct, and many speculating that that number will get down to 2,000. When I'm not trying to shift from one topic to the other, but as Ben says, we could be going into a recession here in the back end of 2023. How do we see this all unfolding, you guys? I guess the question for both of you, if we see that many more banks actually declining in the U.S., what are we looking at as far as a timeline if that indeed happens and the impact, like I said, it's going to have on the economy?
So the number of banks declining, I don't think is necessarily a bad thing because I don't think there should be that many to begin with, all things considered. But I mean, we could be heading into some pretty tumultuous times as far as the markets go. I actually was going to say the counterpoint to what Ben said. I believe that Trulieve might not have guided because they probably have no idea what the state of the consumer is going to be going to the back half of this year. I think we're going to go into a recession. I mean, I think you're going to still see some destruction in the value of the dollar. The government right now can't get its shit together around the debt ceiling. Commercial real estate is still sitting there. Just rearing its ugly head. I mean, there's a lot of uncertainty and there's a lot of black swan events that can happen from now until the end of the year. And it's kind of like everybody's got their head in the sand. Everyone knows what's going on, but no one wants to address it and no one has any idea how to fix it. And no one can agree on fixing it. So, I mean, we're one bad decision away from some sort of crisis.
Can it be fixed? Because when you look at a lot of these BRICS countries that are now outperforming the G7 countries and a potentially new global currency, how does one make, whether or not this ever can be realistically fixed? Your thoughts,
So,
Ben?
I mean,
Go ahead, Anthony, either one of you.
go ahead, Ben. I'll make
ahead.
my point after.
Yeah, I was
I
going
mean, I was gonna say the dollar, the dollar's the strongest currency over the last 10 years from a global standpoint. I mean, if it's one thing that people need to kind of get over is the deterioration in the dollar being dethroned as a global currency is headline risk. It's headlines that are exacerbated by the media and by outlets that want you to think that. I mean, the U.S. dollar is not going anywhere. You want to talk about the BRICS nations? I mean, I think that's a pretty powerful and compelling value proposition that they have on their end. And I mean, I commend them. Go ahead and do what you think is in the best interest of your country. But look at the yuan, look at the ruble, look at any of those other countries' currencies, and let me know how they stack up to the dollar. They're a joke. compared to it. I think we have a lot of problems, but we're still the most powerful country in the world. We're still the most entrepreneurial country in the world. The U.S. it's not going to go anywhere. We just need to figure our shit out, or we're going to fall.
See, the question
What do
is
you think
whether
are
they
the-
want to figure our shit out, because
You're right.
in a way, it almost appears, and maybe I'm wrong on this, but it almost appears that they want crisis to happen and they want the dollar to fall, because then that would segue into other payment systems that purportedly that want to be introduced. So I don't know. It's a very tricky environment because you don't actually know what the power structure actually wants to do, whether they can capitalize and advance other interests based on a dollar crisis. But I will say that if global markets go into a big catalysm, the U.S. dollar usually hangs in better than traditionally than most, right? So the U.S. dollar should gain strength in any sort of crisis, and gold should fall, and then we'll see where the cards fall after that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I mean, yeah. Ben's pretty.
Stop
dead on
freaking
there.
out. Everything's just fine.
Everything's not fine. Everything's fucking really far from fine. But
Everything's not fine.
yeah. Yeah. No, everything is.
There's a lot more
very
dead bodies to come, and with commercial real estate too, like in the banks. I think you're going to see a lot more. I think we just saw the precursor there. I'm not saying it's going to be Mad Max situation at all or anything like that. What I am saying is there's going to be more regionals to fail and all that, and there's going to be a lot more pressure on the system. And the FDIC only has 1.7% of actual deposit insurance on total deposits in the U.S. So if a lot of banks fall, it's going to get quite hairy. It just no one knows how many.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also
The problem.
saw Charlie Munger.
The problem is the fiat experiment. That's the U.S. dollar. Our only fix has always been print more money, and thanks to COVID, we can't really print any more money. For the first time in history, we're actually faced with fixing the problem. And unfortunately, if you look at what like Greece had to do when they had a borderline currency crisis and they couldn't restructure their debt and they couldn't print more money, they had to drastically cut entitlements. They had to raise taxes. They basically have to do stuff that the spineless politicians in this country won't do due to the corporate interest, because they'll be one and done and they'll be voted out. So it really is like a Mexican standoff with what's going on right now, because the politicians know what needs to be done, but they can't do it because they're afraid that they'll get voted out.
Self-seeking all-time high. That ain't going away.
No.
Let's now shift to news in the media and a media figure. Tucker Carlson is actually coming to Twitter. His non-compete definitely will make this interesting regarding what the relationship will look like. But this on the heels of the news that Twitter recently enabled creators to create a paid-for-subscription experience where content creators can monetize their content. So how exactly will this work? Like, do we see basically Tucker running an actual video show on Twitter where people need to subscribe and make money, I assume?
I think Tucker's going to take his entire platform D2C or direct to consumer. I think you're going to see him syndicate through Twitter. I think you're going to see him syndicate through YouTube, and he's going to create a media empire for himself. But I mean, I think there's a lot to kind of unpack here. I mean, Tucker kind of came out yesterday with the messaging of, oh, I'm here to be the voice of reason. I'm here to be freedom of speech. I'm here to give you the truth. I mean, the motherfucker just lied to us for 7 years straight on Fox News in the name of a paycheck. Basically gave up his dignity to make $1. So, I mean, I don't know how well perceived it's going to be that he's now going to be the voice of truth and the voice of the media and the free press on Twitter. I'm all for a redemption story. I mean, I think that Tucker's been right about a lot of things, most notably vaccines, masks, a lot of the gender identity politics. I agree with him on a lot of those things, but at the same time, he's lied, bold-faced lied in like a conspiratorial nature, like on live TV, that he literally said that he didn't believe in it. He just said it anyway because the network wanted him to say it. I have a hard time trusting someone
100%.
like that, but I think that he's potentially going to become the second biggest thing on Twitter, aside from Elon Musk and maybe Donald Trump. He's going to become that big.
Out of curiosity, what did he lie about? Because the reason why he got fired from Fox News is because, or let go, is because he's, flying over the target with some hard truths that I think, that some very powerful people probably got tired of. All right, so that's the reason why for saying the truth that a lot of people that won't say it on cable news. That's the reason why it's dismissed. So did he lie about something specifically, or?
Yeah, the January 6th election being stolen. The election was not stolen.
Here we go.
I mean, I know that's what you want. I know that's what you wanted me to say.
No, I actually didn't. I actually didn't know what you're referring to. I'm just going to defer judgment.
If you look at if you look at the Dominion, if you look at the Dominion lawsuit, I mean, Tucker literally sitting there saying like, "Fuck," like I have to go on TV and say and say that I believe that the election was stolen. Tucker genuinely said in text, he's like, "I don't believe this," and the only reason that I'm saying it is because it's coming from upstairs.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't hear that. Okay.
Yeah.
Having worked in mainstream media, I can say I can see this from a mile away as to, he's basically having a voice in what the network wants to pay him. And he sold his soul, obviously, to the corporation. But to your point, Anthony, yeah, like how this all looks, he doesn't really have anybody to answer to. But if he has a narrative that basically fits a certain audience's views, this is going to be huge. But as you said earlier, all is not fine in the world today, as you guys just indicated. And I think examples like this is not good for the overall, like, where are we? Like, the media has such a major influence in how we look at things. And when I look at people like him, Sean Hannity, it's horrible for
I mean, I think
society.
the media, I mean, you could argue that the Chinese state-run media is propaganda to like the 10th degree, but at least it's not for profit and it's not influenced by corporations. Like the media today is just so toxic when you look at MSNBC to CNN to Fox News. Like just the narratives that they're pushing are so misguided and so ill-informed and so influenced that like
it's to stay relevant though. That's just it.
You have to,
their audiences, like we talked about it. Yeah, like even when Kevin O'Leary was telling us back in like December, like the audiences that ABC gets across the country for Shark Tank is like next to nothing. However, if you see these short clips on YouTube, they get millions of views. But journalism is out, and people may or may not be aware of this, but back in the 90s when Bill Clinton was president, he signed a bill that allowed corporations to come in and buy media companies. And from that point on, the media landscape changed forever. Okay, so Tucker Carlson, what else we want to address? Let's talk actually the latest reports regarding inflation. They actually came in lower than expected. Analysts were predicting 5%. Report came in at 4.9%. So not really much difference. It's pretty much in line, even though it was a little bit lower. But is there much really to read into this, Ben, and what the future holds?
I think the biggest read into this is that inflation has dropped 10 straight quarters. So we have, we're way beyond having a trend. It's going lower. I think the ultimate question is it going to stay lower or is it going to stay, it's going to keep trending lower and not rebound because we still have supply chain issues and a lot of issues in the world. So far, so good. Yeah. Hopefully it lasts. If it does, that will be very good benefit for the consumer. And, maybe we'll even get a mild recession or a skirt recession if we can get inflation numbers down towards that 3% level. But, we shall see.
Yeah. Also important to note, Anthony, the stock market itself, 10th straight month of decline since June of 2022. What'd you make of that? Not surprised.
I mean, it's not surprising. Like people have been like, everyone that keeps talking about a recession and keeps talking about bear markets. I'm like, we're living in one. We've been living in one for a while now. The market's choppy. The market's choppy. I don't think it's gonna alleviate itself anytime soon. I don't think there's gonna be some cyclical bull market that resumes. But I mean, earnings are mixed at best. You see some companies that are coming in really hot. You see other companies that are putting up duds of quarters, and it's just a waiting game. I mean, I'm sitting on my hands like I have been for the past 8 months.
Yeah, makes sense. Not a bad strategy. Last thing I wanted to touch on is not a good week for the former president, Donald Trump, facing more allegations and basically has been accused of sexual assault regarding was that a journalist or a former employee? Lawsuit was funded by Reid Hoffman. But he's basically ordered to pay $5 million to Jean Carroll. What does this do for his presidential run potentially in 2024 based on the latest announcement?
I hate to say this.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. It's,
Things are unfolding fast.
So here's the thing, though. Do
you guys want to defer this question?
No, it's fine. It's fine because it actually brings up a bigger point that I wanted to bring up, which is another headline that was out yesterday. But I mean, Donald is no stranger, unfortunately, to the way that he treats women. This $5 million settlement is, as it relates to a civil case about defamation, which after she made this claim, he defamed her in the public, which is why she's being awarded the money. He was actually found innocent in the rape charges, in the sexual abuse charges, and in any of the criminal proceedings around the case, which is all that matters. But I mean, I don't know if you guys saw, but the punter from the Bills, Areza, actually got proven innocent yesterday from a gang rape accusation of when he was in college. Now, this kid was an all-world punter. He was the highest punter drafted in his class, and the Bills cut him before he was proven guilty or innocent. And they come out to find yesterday that he was actually never even at the premises where the woman accused him of rape, but he was basically seen as guilty simply by the accusation, which is the opposite way that the legal system in this country works. And it just goes to show, like, this woman in the Trump in the Trump case, she could have been telling the truth. This woman just makes it bad for the rest of them because obviously you can't scream rape and then it ruins people's lives. I think you should do jail time if you accuse someone of that and you're found just to be completely lying. I mean, that ruins someone's life.
I think you're onto something there. 100%. 100%.
Yeah. And no NFL teams called this guy still. It
sounds like he should send a lawsuit to the Bills, right, for unlawful dismissal. But they can claim something else that they cut him for another reason.
Yeah,
I guess
it gets hairy, but I mean, yes, you could probably argue unlawful termination. But yeah, I mean, they literally were just like, all right, we don't care if you're guilty or innocent. The headline's a headline, you're gone. And they caught him before the season starts.
Good stuff, gents. Appreciate the feedback. Also, later tonight, we're actually going to be having a Twitter space with the co-manager and president of Ploris Equity Group, Rob Seacrest. He joins us 8 p.m. at our Twitter account, at The Dales Report. We're going to be talking about what to expect from the hearing tomorrow, May 11th, regarding safe banking, and some of the feedback that we had from our podcast last week, just about clarifying some of the things about Rob really encouraging wanting SAFE to pass and the opportunities it presents Ploris Equity Group based off of that, amongst other things. As well, beginning Monday, make sure to follow us. There's going to be a contest. We're giving away a free Apple iPhone 14. All the details of the contest will be posted on Monday. Again, go to our Twitter report, at The Dales Report, for your chance to win. Appreciate the update midweek, gents. Let's keep in touch, and we'll check back in later this week.
Talk soon.
Thanks, guys.
Go Leafs. Hey, everyone. Thanks for watching. And if you want to learn more about the emerging industries that we cover, then leave a comment below and let us know who you want us to interview, the questions you want asked, and the information that you want to learn. We want to hear from you. As usual, click on that bell for all notifications to get the latest information. Share this video with your network, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel because we would not be here without you. Thanks for watching, everyone.